probably don't know my name. And honestly, that's exactly the way I wanted it. My name is Jawed Karim. And if that name means nothing to you right now, let me give you a hint. You have used something I built every single day of your life, whether you realized it or not. Whether you were laughing at a comedy clip, or crying at a wedding video, or learning how to fix your car engine at 2 in the morning, you were using something that I helped create. Something that started with 19 seconds of me standing in front of some elephants at a zoo, not really knowing what I was doing, not really knowing that the entire world was about to change because of what I was about to press, upload. I am the co-founder of YouTube, and I am probably the most unknown billionaire that you will ever almost hear about. Let me take you back. Not to the zoo. Not yet. Let me take you back to where all of this really begins. To a city called Merseburg, in East Germany, in the year 1979, October 28th, to be exact. The world I was born into was not the world you live in now. East Germany in 1979 was a controlled, communist state. There were walls, real walls. There were limits on what you could say, what you could read, what you could dream. My father, Jawed Karim, had come from Bangladesh, a Muslim man from South Asia, living in communist East Germany. Already that alone should tell you that my life was never going to be ordinary. My mother, Christine Karim, was a German biochemist, a woman of science, a woman who looked at the world and asked, why, before she asked anything else. I grew up between two cultures, two languages, two worlds, and I think that collision, that tension between different ways of seeing the world, is what ultimately made me an engineer. Because engineers look at broken systems and ask how to fix them, and the world I was born into had a lot of broken systems. We did not stay in East Germany for long. My family crossed the inner German border and moved to West Germany when I was just a toddler. We settled in a city called Neuss. And even there, even in the free West, we were not truly free from the things that follow families like mine. The stares, the prejudice, the quiet but unmistakable message that we did not quite belong. My father was brilliant. My mother was brilliant. And yet brilliance is not always enough to make a place feel like home. In 1992, when I was 12 years old, we packed everything again and moved to the United States. We landed in Minnesota, St. Paul to be specific, then Maplewood. My father went to work for 3M, one of the most respected research companies in the world. My mother became an associate professor of biochemistry at the University of Minnesota, and I discovered computers. I want you to understand what computers were to a 12-year-old boy in the early 1990s. They were not entertainment. They were not social media. They were not something you carried in your pocket. They were these strange, humming machines that most people were afraid of. But I was not afraid. I was obsessed. I had started programming when I was 10 years old, on a Commodore computer, back in Germany. By the time I reached high school in Minnesota, I was already writing code that most adults around me could not understand. I wasn't doing it for grades. I wasn't doing it because someone told me to. I was doing it because there was something almost magical about the idea that you could write words, just words, lines of logic, and the machine would do exactly what you told it to do. No politics, no prejudice, no borders. Just pure, clean, mathematical truth. I attended St. Paul Central High School, and I graduated in 1997. And then I did something that, looking back, was probably the defining decision of my life. I enrolled at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign to study computer science. The University of Illinois is not just any school. It is the birthplace of some of the most important technologies in internet history. Mark Andreessen, the man who created the first web browser, the thing that made the internet usable for normal human beings. He built it there. Walking through those corridors, I could feel the weight of what had happened in those rooms, and I wanted to add to it. But I was never the kind of person who could wait. I was impatient, not with people, but with time. I could see possibilities ahead of me, and I could not sit still while they existed without me pursuing them. So before I even graduated, I made another defining decision. I dropped out. I left the University of Illinois to join a company that most people had never heard of, that I could see was going to change the world. That company was PayPal. PayPal, in those early days, was a small startup, trying to solve a problem that seemed almost too simple. How do you send money from one person to another over the internet? How do you make that safe? How do you make that fast? How do you make that something an ordinary person would trust? I joined PayPal as one of its earliest employees, and I went to work on one of the most critical problems any financial technology company can face: fraud. I designed the real-time anti-fraud system for PayPal. I built the thing that stood between the platform and the criminals who were constantly trying to break it. Think about what that means. Think about the level of complexity involved. You are processing millions of transactions in real time, and you have to identify which ones are legitimate and which ones are attacks before the damage is done, before the money is gone. It was one of the hardest engineering problems I had ever faced, and I loved every second of it. It was at PayPal that I met two people who would change my life forever. Their names were Steve Chen and Chad Hurley. Steve was quiet, precise, intensely focused. Chad was creative, visual, always thinking about design and user experience. And I was the systems guy, the one who thought about infrastructure and scale and the hidden machinery that makes everything else possible. We were three very different people who somehow clicked. We were friends first. The idea of building something together came later. The idea came from a moment of frustration. There are two moments, actually, that I always talk about when I explain how YouTube was born. First was the 2004 Super Bowl halftime show. You might remember what happened. Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake were performing, and there was an incident that was on live television, seen by hundreds of millions of people around the world. The next day, everyone was talking about it. Everyone wanted to see the clip again. It was impossible. You could not find it. The internet, which was supposed to be this infinite repository of human knowledge, could not serve you a video clip of something that had just happened on national television. That seemed insane to me. The second moment was even more personal. It was the Indian Ocean tsunami of December 2004. One of the worst natural disasters in recorded human history. Hundreds of thousands of people died, and people were trying to find footage, trying to understand what had happened, trying to see it with their own eyes. And again, the internet failed. There was footage, people had filmed it, but there was no place to put it, no easy way to share it, no platform that existed for the simple act of uploading and watching video. I remember thinking, this is absurd. We have the technology, we have the bandwidth, we have the computers. What we do not have is the platform. What we do not have is the right system. And that was the thought that started everything. Steve, Chad, and I began meeting after work. We started sketching out what a video sharing website might look like. What would it need? You needed a way to upload. You needed a way to encode the video so it could play in any browser. You needed a way to share a link. You needed a way to let people discover new videos. We mapped it all out. We argued about it. We rebuilt it. We argued again. The early idea was actually different from what YouTube eventually became. We were initially thinking about something more like an online video dating service, which sounds strange in retrospect, but the underlying technology, the ability to upload and play video easily, was the same. And then we realized that it was the technology itself that mattered, not the use case. Any use case. All use cases. We registered the domain name YouTube.com on February 14th, 2005. Valentine's Day. I always thought that was a nice touch, even if it was an accident. And then on April 23rd, 2005, I did something that I have thought about almost every day since. I created the first YouTube account, username Jawed, because that is my name. Because I was not trying to be clever or mysterious, I was just doing what needed to be done. And I uploaded the first video ever posted to YouTube. It was called Me at the Zoo. My high school friend Yakov Lipitsky was the one holding the camera. We were at the San Diego Zoo. There were elephants in the background, and I looked into the camera and I said something about elephant trunks being cool, and the video lasted exactly 19 seconds, and when it was done, I pressed upload, and I thought nothing special of it. I thought, okay, the upload feature works. I thought, good, the video plays. I thought, the system works. I was testing the product. I was not thinking about history. That video, me at the zoo, has now been watched over 395 million times. 395 million. And there is only one video on my channel. I have never uploaded another one. I have over 1 million subscribers. That is perhaps the most quietly ridiculous fact about my entire existence in the digital world. Here is the thing that people do not understand about what happened next. When YouTube started growing, and it grew faster than anything any of us expected, faster than almost anything in internet history, I made a choice that most people in Silicon Valley would consider insane. I stepped back. I chose not to be an employee. I agreed to take a smaller share of the company in exchange for the freedom to not be tied to the day-to-day operations. I went back to school. I enrolled as a graduate student at Stanford University, pursuing my master's degree in computer science, while acting as an informal advisor to YouTube from the outside. People have asked me why. Why? If you knew what this thing was going to become, why would you walk away? Why would you take less? The honest answer is that I never believed in defining my life by accumulation. I believed in defining my life by learning. I had more to learn. Stanford was calling. I trusted Steve and Chad to run it, and I was right to trust them. They did extraordinary work. In October 2006, Google announced that it was acquiring YouTube for approximately $1.65 billion in stock. $1.65 billion. For a company that was barely 18 months old, it was, at the time, one of the largest acquisitions in internet history. Steve and Chad became very wealthy men overnight. And I, because of my smaller stake, because of the choice I had made, received approximately $64 million worth of Google stock. $64 million. Some people read that number and feel sorry for me, like I left something on the table. I want to be very clear. I left nothing on the table. I got exactly what I chose, and I chose correctly. Because $64 million is not a number that limits a life. It is a number that sets a life free. And then something strange happened. I became invisible. Not accidentally invisible. Intentionally invisible. By design. When the acquisition closed and the news cycle moved on, I simply did not participate in the fame machine. Chad and Steve gave interviews. Chad and Steve went to conferences. Chad and Steve built profiles. And I went back to campus. I went back to my books and my code and my thoughts. Most of the world did not even know I existed. For years, YouTube was described as the company founded by Chad Hurley and Steve Chen, two founders. That was the story that most journalists told. And I did nothing to correct it, because I did not need to. I knew what I had built. People who mattered knew what I had built. The internet, somewhere in its vast and humming memory, knew what I had built. It was not until the Google acquisition itself that reporters started digging and found, wait, there is a third founder? There is someone named Jawed Karim? And I was suddenly, briefly, in the spotlight that I had spent a year and a half carefully avoiding. I did not enjoy the spotlight. I did not ask for it. And as soon as it moved on, I let it go. I completed my master's degree at Stanford. And then I did what the people who shaped me had always done. I started investing in the next generation of ideas. In 2008, I co-founded a venture fund called University Ventures, later renamed Y Ventures, with two partners, Kevin Hartz and Keith Rabois. The specific focus of this fund was university students, people still in school, people who had the seed of an idea, but not yet the resources or the connections to build it. I had been that person once. I had been the kid at the University of Illinois who could see something others couldn't, who had the technical ability but needed the right environment. I wanted to be the environment. I wanted to be the person who looked at a 20-year-old with a crazy idea and said, I believe you. Let's build it. What came out of those investments? Some of the most important technology companies of the last 15 years. I invested early in Airbnb, when it was still just an idea about letting strangers sleep on air mattresses in your apartment. I invested early in Reddit, the site that bills itself as the front page of the internet. I served on the board of Postmates, one of the early leaders in food delivery. I served on the board of Eventbrite. I have placed bets, quietly and deliberately, on technology that has gone on to shape how hundreds of millions of people live their daily lives. And I have done all of this without a single tweet, without a single Instagram post, without a single appearance on a podcast or a talk show or a keynote stage. That silence is not emptiness. That silence is a choice. Let me tell you something about fame. I have watched what it does to people. I have watched brilliant engineers become media personalities. I have watched founders who could have built 3 more remarkable things instead spend their time maintaining their personal brands, managing their public images, cultivating their follower counts. And I am not judging them. I understand the incentive structures. I understand why the machine pulls people in, but I have never wanted that. I have never needed the validation of a public. I have never needed strangers to know my name in order to feel that what I was doing mattered. What matters to me is the work. What matters to me is the idea. What matters to me is the moment when a system that was broken becomes a system that works. That moment does not need an audience. That moment is complete in itself. I want to tell you about a few moments when I broke my silence. Because even a man who lives in quiet sometimes has things that need to be said out loud. In 2013, Google made a decision that I found extraordinary in its arrogance. They required every YouTube user to link their account to a Google Plus profile in order to leave a comment on a video. Google Plus was Google's attempt to compete with Facebook, and it was failing. And this was an attempt to force YouTube's enormous user base to prop up a struggling product. I logged into my YouTube account, the account with one video, the account that has sat dormant since April 2005, and I wrote something. I asked, and I will quote myself directly here because the exact words matter. Why the fuck do I need a Google Plus account to comment on a video? And I updated the description on me at the zoo to say, I can't comment here anymore, since I don't want a Google Plus account. That one comment, from the account that started everything, set the internet on fire. The YouTube community had been frustrated for months, and suddenly here was the man who uploaded the first video on the platform, speaking plainly about what everyone was thinking. Google heard it. Google actually heard it. They publicly apologized. They reversed course. They dropped the Google Plus requirement. And eventually, in 2018, they shut down Google Plus entirely. One comment from a man with one video, and it changed platform policy for hundreds of millions of users. In 2021, YouTube made another decision I disagreed with. They removed the public dislike count from videos. This was, ostensibly, to protect creators from harassment campaigns. But it also removed something much more important. It removed the ability of the audience to evaluate the credibility of information. If a video teaching you something dangerous or false has millions of views and an invisible dislike count, you have no way of knowing that the community rejected it. The dislike button was not just about negativity. It was a form of collective truth-telling, and they took it away. I updated the description of me at the zoo again. I wrote, "The internet is a collection of people's ideas, and people should be able to rate those ideas." The community, again, heard it as a statement of principles. YouTube, this time, did not reverse course. But I said what needed to be said. And in early 2025, I updated the description once more. This time, not about YouTube policy, but about something larger. About microplastics. About the invisible pollution that is finding its way into human brain tissue. About the quiet, environmental crisis that is being studied in laboratories right now and has not yet become the public emergency that it deserves to be. Because even the first video on YouTube, that 19-second clip of a young man talking about elephant trunks, has become over 20 years a sort of message board. A place where I occasionally say, in a few words, what I believe the world needs to hear. Who am I now? That is the question you have been waiting for, isn't it? Where is Jawed Karim today? I am in Palo Alto, California. I live quietly. I do not have a Twitter account, or an Instagram, or a Facebook, or a TikTok. My YouTube channel, the most storied YouTube channel in history by any historical measure, has exactly one video. I have been asked countless times, why don't you make another video? The honest answer is, what would I say? The first video said everything it needed to say. It said, here is a platform that works. It said, here is what is possible. Everything that came after was other people's story. YouTube was always meant to be other people's story. I was just the one who opened the door. My estimated net worth today is somewhere between $300 and $400 million. I did not build that through salary or endorsement or celebrity. I built it through early equity, in the right ideas, through a venture fund that backed the right people, through patient, long-term thinking, in a world that rewards urgency and punishes patience. I sold my YouTube shares in 2013 for roughly $300 million, and I continue to invest in early-stage technology companies through Y Ventures and through my own quiet, private work. In 2019, YouTube, alongside Steve Chen and Chad Hurley, awarded me something I did not expect, and am still processing, an Emmy Award for Lifetime Achievement. The three of us received it together for what we had done to transform media, to democratize video, to put the camera in the hands of every